more than a dozen Department of Justice employees who worked on the criminal prosecutions of President Trump have been fired. Those who worked on special counsel Jack Smith's team were targeted. I want to bring in Justice Department reporter Jake Rosen to talk about the future of the department. So the question, Jake, is could these fired prosecutors challenge the terminations? Many of them are long-term civil servants who've been a part of the DOJ, serving multiple administrations, both Republican and Democrat. What are you hearing?
Well, Vlad, it's certainly possible that they would, although we saw from the email that has been reported by other news outlets that was sent to these employees, basically saying, because of your investigations of Donald Trump, basically you're not welcome here, and we don't trust your judgment going forward. Now, to officially fire some of these civil servants, many of these people, like you pointed out, are exactly that. They're not political appointees of the Department of Justice. You have to prove basically that they're not doing their job to the capability that they need to be doing it to, and that there's some kind of cause to be fired. Now, in a letter sent today by Jamie Raskin, you'll remember him from those January 6 hearings, a loud vocal member and opponent of Donald Trump in the House, and he's the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. He wrote a letter today that was just published saying that he wants to see evidence from the Department of Justice and the interim leaders there before Pam Bondi potentially gets confirmed, showing that they actually went through the mechanisms of making sure that these people can actually be fired and didn't just blanket fire them, although we know from what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail forever, he basically pledged to do this on day one once Jack Smith officially took over. So to challenge that would be very difficult for these people to do.
Just to be clear, Jake, are those folks still in their jobs today, or have they had to leave the positions while this all gets sorted out?
Our understanding is that they basically were terminated as of yesterday, although we'll have to keep reporting out that today.
All right. So as Trump positions close allies like Kash Patel, for example, who's been nominated to be the FBI director, how does he, or what is he saying about how he plans to end what he calls the weaponization of the federal government? Those are the president's words.
Well, it's certainly possible, Vlad, that they do the same thing in the FBI, and they find the FBI agents who were working on whether it's the raid of Mar-a-Lago that Donald Trump has pointed to as really one of the moments that made him know that he needed to get into the campaign and run and basically cleanse the Department of Justice, cleanse the FBI, and purge them of people who he sees as disloyal to his worldview and his loyalists. It's very possible that what we saw yesterday happens there, but it's also possible that what we've seen in the Department of Justice also happens in a different way, which is reassigning career bureaucrats, some of these people who have worked for 20 or 30 years in the Department of Justice, in the FBI, moving them to Donald Trump's mission, which is immigration. So what we've seen is basically mass resignations in the DOJ as well, by moving people from their longtime jobs to new jobs, focusing on eliminating sanctuary cities and going after cities that are not helping with the Trump administration's deportation plans. So again, you can either fire them or you can basically transfer them and force them to resign or reevaluate their career prospects.
All right. Jake Rosen for us, reporting from Washington this morning. Thanks, Jake.